what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, this is definitely a movie that I've been wanting to see for quite some time, especially since I first heard about it, and also since I saw the first trailer. And not to mention the second trailer was just awesome in that, and whenever December 18th hit, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it's actually upon us, and I finally got around to see it on New Year's and that, and needless to say, I love the movie, especially if you guys watch my update video, but I'll tell you what, I got pumped up for this movie the same I got pumped up whenever Phantom Menace came out in 1999. And much like the Phantom Menace, this movie did not leave me disappointed at all. And yes, folks, I do like the prequel films. I know a lot of you don't, but I enjoyed every single one of them. I enjoyed The Phantom Menace, I enjoyed Attack of the Clones, and I enjoyed Revenge of the Sith. And I will defend the prequel trilogy until the day I die. So I really, really wish people would quit saying that the prequel trilogy sucks, because it really doesn't. And all it is it's a part of the Star Wars saga, and that it helps get the story going. So I will never understand why so many people give that movie a lot of crap. I mean, yeah, the acting in that wasn't really that great, but you know, I'm kind of getting off base here, and that just makes me upset. But yeah, whenever I got in the theaters and that, and whenever I saw the opening crawl on the screen, I can immediately see myself tearing up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm seeing another Star Wars and that, and just from that alone, even the opening scene in that, it just really captured the essence of Star Wars in that, and this is definitely, as a fan of the series, I've been looking forward to watching in that, and having said that, even though I enjoyed the movie, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's perfect. I mean, this movie does have flaws in that, but you know what? What movie doesn't? I mean, even the other Star Wars movies, even the original trilogy has flaws in it. But I'll be talking more about that, and I'll also be talking about later about this movie had a lot of good points. There isn't so much this movie did right, but there's also other parts this movie got a little bit off in that, which I'll be talking about that later in the video. But yeah, I was not disappointed watching this movie in that, and like I said before, the beginning of the movie set the overall tone of the movie so well, where you get to see the Star Destroyer moving across the face of the planet, and you see all these shuttles coming down with the stormtroopers and that, and they land on Jakku, which is a desert planet, and we get to see Poe Dameron for the first time talking to, I think it was his father or something, some old guy who's played by Max von Sydow, which did Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon, and but yeah, even then you could definitely see where the new conflict is definitely arising, and before I talk more about this movie and that, one of the things I've been seeing about this movie that's really been bothering me is that a lot of people are saying that this movie is a clone of A New Hope and that, and even so much people saying that it's not only a clone of New Hope, but it's also a clone of Empire Strikes Back. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there weren't any similarities between A New Hope and this movie, or Empire Strikes Back and this movie, because there clearly were. But by saying this is a clone of either one of those movies is totally unfair in that, and I will talk about more of the similarities later. As a matter of fact, this opening scene is kind of similar to the opening scene of New Hope, where they're on the Tantive 4 and you get to see Darth Vader and that, but this movie totally has a different feel to it than the other one, and whenever I watched it, I totally did not think about the original trilogy at all. And I think this is one of the things that J.J. Abrams did a fantastic job at, is that the tone that he set in this movie automatically set it apart from all the other ones. And I can definitely tell where this sequel trilogy is going to have a different feel than what the prequel trilogy had, and also what the original trilogy had. And I think this opening scene and this thing that really struck me is that the scene where, well, we didn't get to see his face yet, but Finn, he's in stormtrooper outfit, and he got to be over with his buddy who just got shot, and you see his friend wiping his bloody hand all over his mask, and at that point I'm like, whoa, this is definitely a much I can't necessarily say darker, even though it is, but it definitely is a different tone than what we've seen in the previous 6 movies. And that, and this kind of struck me a bit interested, considering that this is a Disney movie and that, and I was kind of surprised to see that. But I think this definitely helped get things going in that, and I think this definitely helped with Finn's character a lot, which I'll talk about more about the characters in that later. I know there's definitely a whole lot about this movie that I definitely want to talk about, so. Speaking of the movie's tone, I kind of want to bring up the movie score. And I know there's another thing a lot of people like to criticize about this movie, saying that they were underwhelmed by it. But I think it was very fitting for this movie, especially if we get to where we get to see Rey for the first time, we get to see Han and Chewie for the first time in a movie, and certain points where we get to see the First Order, which is the sequel trilogy's analogy of the Empire, and that they're pretty much the main antagonists in that. They're what the Empire was in the original trilogy and what the Sith were in the prequel trilogy and that. And the songs in the movie that most notably struck with me is, like I said before, we get to see Rey for the first time. Well, we get to see Starkiller Base, which is the main weapon that the First Order has, and we get to see what it's capable of. And also, the very last scene of the movie has a very powerful score, which I'll get to that later on too. But I really didn't see anything, or should I say, I didn't really hear anything about this movie score that really struck me as being underwhelming. I think it isn't as good as anything you would hear from like A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back or even Revenge of the Sith, but I wouldn't say it's a bad score. I mean, I think for what it is, I think it did this movie justice in that, and I just think it's just one of those things where I personally feel people are being too critical about, because I didn't see anything wrong with it. I just think that it's like anything else in life, you know. You just can't please anybody, and well, you just can't please everybody, rather. And I think this is just one of those things where no matter what John Williams would have done with a score, he definitely wouldn't have been able to please everyone. So another thing I want to talk about this movie that I think should be brought up is special effects. And for me personally, I think it took what was the good of the original trilogy special effects and also the best of the prequel trilogy special effects, and I think they combined them really good. I mean, we got to see some of the practical special effects that we saw in the original trilogy, and I think this movie did a good job of recapturing that magic. But I'm also glad that they weren't afraid to mix at least a little bit of CG in it that we got to see from the prequel trilogies, which and another thing I should say about this movie too is that it's not like CG backgrounds like we saw in the prequel trilogy. Like, it's not like we saw like on like Mustafar or Geonosis or anything like that, where you can definitely tell where the actors are in front of the green screen. These are real sets in that, which I do think J.J. Abrams did an awesome job with that, recapturing the feel of at least the original trilogy. But I just, like I said before, I just think when it comes to the special effects, I think they did an amazing job mixing the real and with the computer graphics in that. And I think going along with the score as well as the tone of the movie and that, I think it really did a good job setting itself apart from the other movies. And it's definitely laying a framework and a foundation down for the next 2 movies in the trilogy and that. So,